A very good morning to everyone. We welcome you to this webinar on acceptance and awareness of autism. April is considered to be the Autism Awareness Month, and we at Ambassador School Sharjah have conducted activities to educate our students and staff about autism and what it means. We all have different abilities. Similarly, autism is not a disability, it's a different ability. We need to be sensitive and tolerant to the needs of those who are in the autism spectrum. We are thankful to Dr. Maria Fatima Josephine, founder director of Maria Special Education Services in India, for joining us today to educate us about autism, its identification, and the way the school community can support and accept autistic children and make them a part of our inclusive school culture. Dr. Maria has conducted many awareness workshops for the communities in India. She has been associated with various organizations in India and abroad. Thank you, ma'am, for being with us today. And on behalf of the Ambassador family, we welcome you to this webinar. Now, I would like Mr. Aji Amalraj from the Counseling and Learning Department to give the introductory speech.
A very good morning to everyone. This is my immense pleasure to welcome and introduce Dr. Maria Fatima Josephine to all of you. So Dr. Fatima Josephine is a parent of a special child, CP, that is cerebral palsy. She is qualified as a special educator, having done her courses both in India and Manchester University, UK. Also a psychologist with Masters in Psychology, an MSc in Counseling and Psychotherapy, and a doctorate by the United Nations affiliated Indian Virtual University in Peace and Education in Early Education. She started to work at the Spastic Society of Tamil Nadu and was responsible for starting the first center in North Madras for spastin in 1989. In 1919, she started the community-based rehabilitation program in the rural areas and by mandate attached 6 centers to the PHCS. In 1995, she started the first school for the developmentally delayed in the northern Chennai to reach out the children in Mother Teresa home called Shishu Bhavan and many more in the part of the city. Dr. Maria was also chosen by the Government of India as one of the persons who contributed to the development of the country in the 50th years of India's independence, interviewed by Doordarshan. Due to her experience and networking with both urban and rural sectors, as well as with many local organizations, she was asked to be the director of community ophthalmology at MN Eye Hospital, Chennai. Within 3 years, she conducted more than 5,000 free cataract surgeries, more than 1 lakh students through the school vision care program, and also setting up an eye bank called Valum Kangal Eye Bank. 13,700 free cataract surgeries were performed, covering many villages and urban areas as well. 245 pairs of eyes were collected as donation through motivation of the families. Dr. Maria worked in Canada from 2004 to 2012 with the individuals who had different kinds of disabilities such as cerebral palsy, autism, and a senior with progressive supranuclear palsy, that's a rare disorder. She also was a national leader and a coordinator for Asia for an international organization called Faith and Light. For almost 9 years, a support organization for people with intellectual disabilities and their families. Dr. Maria is a registered professional with the Rehabilitation of India, a regulatory body for a special education and rehabilitation professional. She also was a part of the inspection panel of Rehabilitation Council of India. The list is unending. However, we are very much proud and happy to welcome you and eager to listen to you. And the virtual stage is yours. Thank you, ma'am, and welcome once again.
Um, Good morning to everyone. Can I see myself on the screen, please, so that I know what I'm doing? Is it possible?
Yes, you are seen on the screen.
Yeah, but I cannot see myself here. So should I minimize my...
No, you can go ahead, ma'am.
Okay, sorry. Good morning to everyone. Especially, it's a great honor for me to be associated with this wonderful school called in Sharjah, the Ambassador School. And I thank the esteemed organizers, Madam Venkatraman, as well as Arogya Reddy and Amal Raj, and all others who have given me this opportunity to be with you all this morning. It's indeed a great pleasure, and not only an honor, but I also want to repeat it's a great pleasure. Thank you, Amalraj, for introducing me. Though I understand it's a very, very long introduction, though I would like to cut it short, but why I had to emphasize on all these fears of my working with children with disability over the 4 decades, it was also essential to inform the people that everything is possible. Being a parent, I had to take it upon myself more than 46 years ago when my daughter was born. And after that, she was affected with brain fever and diagnosed as cerebral palsy. Now, that is a different story altogether. But today, I'm very happy to present this small presentation on acceptance and awareness on autism. So, to begin with, we are going to do a little bit on what is autism. I don't have to go through it in a very, very, what do you call, detailed way, because by now, all the information about autism or autism spectrum disorder is there out on the Google for us. In Tamil, we say, there is a saying, Mada Pida Guru Devam. But today we have Mada, Pida, Google, Devam. So, to put it in short, we are taking Google as our God because all the informations are there. And by now, parents of people with any challenges get all the information. So I just want to highlight a few aspects of it. And autism being a neurodevelopmental disorder characterized by three core features. All of you know that it is a qualitative impairment in reciprocal socialization, qualitative impairment in social communication, and also restricted interest and repetitive behavior. Now, autism spectrum disorder, you can term it as there are, according to DSM, that is Diagnostic and Statistical Manual for 5, that is DSM 5, says a few things about autism spectrum disorder. No one can simply diagnose a child about autism, that the child is an autistic child or a child with ASD without the things that are mentioned in DSM 5. And they say that there are a lot of variation. It can vary from child to child. It can be deficits in social communication and interactions. It's restricted interest and activities and behaviors, and also symptoms present in early childhood but may not manifest until increased social demands. So it can range from based on indicators for social communication and for restricted interest and repetitive behaviors category. There will be normal variation, subclinical symptoms, and it can either be mild, moderate, or severe. Now, I'm giving a very, very old statistics here. Why I had to give this is in those days, that is in the year 1987 itself, they said that the incidence of autism or ASD was 1 is to 2000. But today's reality is very staggering. According to another statistics, it says about 1 is to 60 is the statistics today. And again, the boys girls ratio still remains the same 4 is to 1. And again, a lot of the, what do you call, researches are going on. and it can be genetic basis as well as environment. And they say that there are so many people in this category today. Now, why is this? There is a great increase of the incidence of ASD. It is because there are changes in diagnostic criteria, improvements in case recognition, increased awareness of service and delivery systems, and true increase in the system. To mention a few, I was having my own center, and in those days, I didn't come across so many children with ASD or autism. But later, when I came back from Canada in the year 2012, I saw there was such a great increase in the number of children with disability or autism, and the range, and I was every third child that I was seeing was with autistic tendencies. Now, there are comorbidities also, and it can be like anxiety, depression, bipolar, definitely seizures I've seen in many children, and obsessive compulsive disorder, Tourette syndrome, or ADHD. So I'm sure you would be also experiencing children with these kind of characteristics. Now they say that IQ in an autistic child would range from 75% of children diagnosed with autism. The score is in the range of mental retardation on a standardized IQ measures. Most fall in the moderate range of mental retardation. Greater span in IQ for PDD and Asperger's. Often pattern of a sprinter skills. Now, I don't want to go definitely into each of these aspects because already the parents who are attending will be telling, okay, ma'am, I know all about it because I'm seeing this in my child or I'm seeing some other characteristics in my child. But whatever it may be, you would be seeing a lot of language variation. Verbal functioning is at a highly variable across spectrum, lower end of functioning, no spoken language or language comprehension, echolalia, scripted language functional or non-functional, errors in syntax and grammar, example in pronoun reversal, telegraphic speech. Higher end of functioning can be grammar and syntax may be intact, difficulties with pragmatics, abstraction, and figurative language. Now, there will be some motor skills delay or some kind of a motor skills impediment. Early gross motor development tends to be typical. Most of them don't have much of these motor problems, but at a later stage, motor development more delayed, example, coordination of running, pumping, jumping, sorry, it should be jumping, swing, riding a bicycle, and fine motor skills are more problematic. Now, some of the characteristics I'm mentioning here, because for a child to be diagnosed as an autistic, there should be at least 21 characters. But later on, the Psychiatric Association of America, which develops the DSM and also kept on adding many, many symptoms. And then they came up with the diagnosis as autism spectrum disorder. So a child may not need to have all the 21 symptoms, but it can be here and there. So a person with autism may possess the following characteristics in various combinations and in varying degrees of severity: inappropriate laughing, giggling, no real fear of dangers, apparent insensitivity to pain, may not want cuddling. Definitely, I've seen such children may avoid eye contact, may prefer to be alone, difficulty in expressing needs, inappropriate attachments to objects, insistence on sameness, echoes, words, and phrases, spins object or even self. Now, here I would like to mention a few things. See, long time ago, when I was actually doing my studies in UK, way back in 1992, people came to know that children with autism did not like to be cuddled. So they started a therapy called holding therapy, which they said that the child, when is reacting to you, when is very, very anxious or showing some temper tantrums, and because they don't want cuddling, they thought that holding therapy will help them. But ultimately, they found out it was not helping. And of course, avoiding eye contact is still existing in most of our children, and they have difficulty in expressing their needs. Now, this is one of the behaviors to make. Of course, all of you all know about it. It is a common behavior that they may be spinning themselves or even hand flapping and rocking back and forth and tapping on things. Then there is people with a lack of eye contact. They can't make eye contact and they live in their own world. So people with autism often seem to be ignoring you when you talk to them. But this doesn't mean they aren't listening. Many of us mistake it. Sorry. Many of us mistake it for many things. Sorry. And then again, the speech differences. We know that our children are asocial, and some people with autism don't speak at all. Others will repeat what they hear but can't hold a conversation. People on the milder end of the spectrum can engage in conversation, but their speech may be very formal and precise. Then sensory difficulties. I don't know how many of you all are facing this with your child or children, that unusually sensitive to light, touch, and sound. A shirt that feels soft on our body may be unbearably scratching to an autistic child, or even normal sunlight may hurt his eyes terribly. And of course, they are stuck on routines and they don't like things to be altered. I've seen most of our children when they come to our school, parents have been telling that, they like the bus to keep on going when they are traveling. And once it stops, they create a temper tantrum. And even at home, if they have to take the child outside to any other new places, again, there is so many things that is in great difficulty for the parents to handle. So it can be devastating for some parents in such a way that even the normal life of a parent is disturbed. So, fascination with objects is there. People with autism can sometimes sit for hours spinning wheels on toys or trains, bouncing a ball or watching a top spinning. They often get attached to a specific object and need to keep it close all the time. Then, the stages of trauma. Now, you'll be seeing why I am getting into this. See, today we are talking about acceptance of autism as well as an awareness on autism. But I want to mention here, if at all a parent or even a teacher that who has to handle a child with ASD need to know where the parent is. According to the psychology, they say that 5 stages after trauma is definitely a lot of things are happening once they know that there is this diagnosis has been handed over to them. Being aware of the grief stages and how you equally uniquely experience them can increase self understanding and compassion. See, for acceptance, first of all, what has been happening within you? How have you faced this diagnosis when it was told to you? It would have come as a great shock, and definitely it has been a trauma in your life. Because we are today talking about acceptance, I definitely want to tell you how much of a trauma it has been. Because I'm a parent, I also have undergone all these things before I could finally come to the stage of acceptance. So it can help you better understand your needs and prioritize getting them met. Now, first step that we always, I mean, the first stage that we always go through is denial. I don't want to, give a lot of explanation here because the time is short. It can be like shock, it can be numbness, it can be confusion, and sometimes we close ourselves completely. I have come across parents who are still in denial. Even last week, I had a parent coming to me, and whatever program I was setting for the child was not being done. Then the husband told me, "Ma'am, I'm not getting the cooperation of my wife." So I had to call her and I had a session with her. But then I found out that she was still in denial and she was not ready to accept that the child is having a problem. Then the second stage would be anger, frustration, impatient. It can be in the form of, like, how you feel. it can be resentment, it can be embarrassment, it can be rage, and also feeling out of control of your own situation at that time. Because most of the parents, when they beget this child and was given this diagnosis that a child is with autism or with autism spectrum disorder or even with cerebral palsy or whatever may be the disability, definitely they undergo even anger, because we are not able to understand what is happening with the child, and we are not able to understand what is going on with our life also, because suddenly our life is being thrown upside down. Then we start even bargaining, because we think it happened because of me, or they may think it has happened because of the husband or the family or whatever it may be. So then they will start, what is this bargaining? What are we bargaining for? This is the time when we will go to churches, temples, and mosques and say, God, change the situation for me, because we are feeling the guilt, the shame, or even the blame. Because many a times I've seen that a parent, especially the mothers, are being blamed by the entire family. You are the cause for bringing up this child. You are the cause for giving birth to such a child. How many things are happening? How many shocking news have we been hearing around us? It is all because the guilt and shame and the blame they have been put through, the fear and anxiety and insecurity, not knowing what is happening. So sometimes the parents may also go into depression. They feel sad, they feel very despaired, helplessness, hopelessness, disappointment, and overwhelmed, especially overwhelmed, I can say, because we do not know how to take care of our child. We think that, he's uncontrollable. We think that he's throwing all these temper tantrums. But ultimately, what will happen is like acceptance. Unless a parent comes to the stage of acceptance, come to the stage that, I have to take my child as he or she is. He is my child. She is my child. She may have differences. She may have some certain behaviors which is not in line with what the society has determined. So they can feel like good enough, okay, and take courage. That is what happened to me. I had to take courage, come out of my anxiety, of my depression, of my denial, of all the things I underwent, what I just mentioned before, the anger, not able to segregate everything for my child, not able to put right the things that have happened to her, because we can never go back. But what we can do is we can go forward and also overcome the self compassion, the self pity, and also, forget about what the world is thinking about my child or about me too, because we are condemned. Most of the time, we are condemned. But then I would like to say that autism acceptance begins at home. Okay, here, I would like to say that autism acceptance and inclusion is simply looking at autism as the difference in that exists in society, just like so many other differences. Take, for instance, the so-called normal community of people that we are today. Don't we have differences? Don't we have our own weaknesses? Don't we have our skills also? But then it varies. But then, why has the society set a standard that the so called normal people should be doing only this? So, hence, they want our child with the difficulty or with the neurodiversity to be acting and to be looking like us and to do things like us when they simply cannot, because they are neurodiverse people. Acceptance and inclusion go hand in hand, and inclusion can become a reality only when we accept autism as part of the diversity on this planet. This is what I would like to tell today to the world or to the parents here is acceptance is the key factor at play in creating a nurturing environment. Can we do anything about nature? Whatever has happened has happened. But don't we think we can create a nurturing environment? This again leads to better opportunities for inclusion into society. Like charity, acceptance needs to start with the autistic individual's immediate environment which includes parents and the family members, and of course, the school and the teachers and the other peers that are around them. Now, I have been giving a lot of talks, seminars on inclusion because inclusion is the word. But inclusion doesn't happen from top like that. It has to come up from bottom up. And the UNCPRD Act talks about inclusion. Today, the whole world is talking about inclusion. But what is inclusion? Inclusion is nothing but listening to the autistic child individuals, or the child with autism, or the child with autism spectrum disorder. So, over the years, what I've seen is that the message has moved from autism awareness to autism acceptance. Now, we are fed up with having so many programs on autism awareness, especially in the month of April. Even last year, I had an opportunity of conducting an autism awareness program. So I told to the organizers, let us stop with this. The parents are fed up of listening to what is the problem with the child, what is happening around them. They are just fed up of listening to lectures and seminars and conferences. They can't even attend, first of all, because if they have to come with the child, And will the child sit in a place? Impossible. So what I did that year was I invited stories, the success stories of parents who are undergoing. Unless we listen to them, unless we listen to the child with autism or ASD, we won't know what is happening to them. Why not we put ourselves in their shoes, the shoes of the parents or the shoes of the child itself? So the child is crying out to be accepted. Accept me as I am. Yes, there is more understanding of what autism is. People have begun to realize that autistic individuals experience the world differently from you and me than the neurotypical population. However, it's a long, long journey. And how is this going to happen is the need for inclusion. Each one of us are different. The child is different. Each child with autism is different. Each child with cerebral palsy is different. Whatever may be their neurodiversity, each one is different. Now, why is this being stressed so much on inclusion? The concept of inclusion is a meaningful goal to be pursued in our schools and communities. Children, youth, and young adults with disabilities should be served whenever possible in general education classrooms, in inclusive neighborhood schools, and community settings. This was told in 1993. I just want to tell about an experience I had when I was studying at UK at Manchester University, and we had a educational tour, and this was to three different countries where at that time it was called not inclusion, it was called integration. So according to the normalization philosophy, this country, those three countries I visited, that is Norway, Denmark, and Sweden, and I was simply, you know, um, what to say? I was simply surprised at what was going on way back in '92, and here we are now only talking about inclusion. And what is happening is in Denmark, you don't have to put your child to a special school immediately. In whichever area you're living, you have to send your child to that school. So I happened to visit a center that was doing wonderful service for the visually challenged. So the director of that organization was, showing us various gadgets, telling us various things. So I asked him, like, sir, you have developed so many things. That was the first time I'm seeing a speaking computer with voice synthesizer, which was all new to me in those days, and still it is new here. Maybe it is coming up, but then the inclusion was happening long time ago, or integration started happening way back. So here, this director told me. I asked him, "How did you get into this profession?" And what was your motivation? Then he said, "Ma'am, here it is a mandate that as soon as a child is born with visual loss or visual impairment, they straight away have to come to this special school. I mean, to the school that was there in their own region or area. And it was the teacher who has to qualify himself if there wasn't any other qualified staff to handle a child with visual impairment. So he said he joined because that particular year there was a student that was admitted with visual impairment in his school. So he joined a training center and he was blindfolded and he did his whole education that for full 1 year with his eyes blindfolded. And he said, I became the best cook, I became the best tailor, I can do everything, with my eyes blindfolded. So uh, that is what made him to realize the pain. He got into the shoes of that person with a difficulty, with a disability, and he started opening doors for them. So, what is it that we are going to do? So, the most effective schools or schools with inclusive orientation, like how your ambassador school is doing today, the most effective means of combating discriminatory attitudes is building an inclusive society and achieving education for all. So that can happen only with acceptance. So I'm just going to tell a few things. And inclusive education is not a marginal issue, but is central to the achievement of high quality education for all learners and the development of more inclusive societies. Are we having it today? No, we are only having exclusivity still now. Parents are excluded, the child is excluded. Though in India we have the right to education, how many schools, the so called normal schools, are including a child with disability? In my own experience, some parents have come crying to me saying, Ma'am, this school, as soon as my child reached the ninth standard, instead of promoting her to class 10, they simply said, take her out because our school will be losing the 100% pass percentage. This is what is happening. What are we telling about inclusivity to our population? Inclusive education is essential to achieve social equity and is a constituent element of lifelong learning. Have we been thrown out of the school at an early age for some reason or the other? What would have happened to our life? This happened to my daughter also. I thought, like, she's a pretty girl, and the school that I studied will accept her. And she was just 3 years old. So I took her to the school where I studied long time back. And the first word that that school principal told me was, no, we cannot admit your child because your child is drooling. My gosh, did she ever think of the pain that a parent would undergo? How many of us are undergoing it even today? Your child is not fit. Your child is not fitting into this, the child is a round peg. And how can we think of putting her in a square cube? Very difficult. But then this is what the society is still doing to us. So, why is the need of inclusion very crucial for us? As the incidence of disabilities are increasing, we are not having enough trained and qualified professionals. Still, our country is not concentrating on prevention of disabilities. Infant mortality rate is very high compared to other developing countries. You won't believe a statistics that I came across some time ago that in the mortality rate, India was even lower than Bangladesh. But with medical advancement, the morbidity rate is increasing. So, what does it mean? More children with some form of disability. Let me tell you the truth. I am witnessing that there is an increase in the number of disability. And now is the hour. It's a very crucial hour that inclusion has to happen. With no proper early identification and intervention, no central monitoring of the curricula, no central monitoring of the inclusive schools, and the type of programs or assessments being used. Are the teachers, sorry, I'm not hurting anyone, I'm not criticizing anyone here, I'm just talking out of my own experience. Are the teachers, the special educators, have the necessary qualification to handle different disabilities? namely learning specific learning disability, autism spectrum disorder, attention deficit hyperactive disorder, visual impairment, hearing impairment, intellectual impairment. You know what has happened over the years in teacher education? We have segregated the education as well. Just as we are segregating our children with different forms of disability, and yet we are talking about inclusion, but the teacher education has become very specific, like B.Ed in autism spectrum disorder, B.Ed in learning disability, B.Ed in cerebral palsy, B.Ed in visual impairment, in hearing impairment, and intellectual impairment. So, a person who has done her B.Ed or M.Ed in a specific disability, how will the child or the teacher be able to handle an inclusive setup? It is not happening. So, this is a sad situation. So, what is our plan of action? When we talk about acceptance, when we talk about awareness, don't you think a plan of action should come together? First and foremost, attitudinal changes and policy development. There are hundreds of policies now, right now, I'm telling you, but it is all up there. But nothing is bottom down. Unless you start here, unless your attitude changes, unless you have accepted the child, unless you have accepted the child with all the neuro diversity, how will you act upon? Ensuring inclusion through early childhood care and education. See, I'm an early childhood I've identified children with disability even from 0 years, and that has been my forte in my research because I missed out on the early childhood education for my child. Because by the time I came to know about what is cerebral palsy and how I can help her, it was about 7 years. She was 7 years when I took up special ed. But then the critical period of development is 0 to 2 years. If you're a parent of a child of a younger age, start helping your child, start understanding your child. So, very important is the early childhood care and education and inclusive curriculum. How have you formulated this? How are you going to help the child? And also the teachers and teacher education, resources and legislation. Is it going to happen? This is what we have to plan. This is our time to plan, think back and plan. So, first of all, as I told you, you have to understand your child, get into the child's shoes. See, when the child is crying or when the child is putting up a temper tantrum, instead of you becoming traumatized, why don't you understand what the child is trying to communicate? The child has a fear of the unknown because you're making him to do something. You're taking him outside somewhere and you're wanting him to do something that you want him to do, not what the child wants to do. So, acceptance and attitude. What is your attitude towards this child, towards other children, and towards the society? So, as a final word, I would like to say, in the simplest terms, autism acceptance is only about embracing differences, about embracing neurodiversities. It is about appreciating that we are all human beings, that we are all entitled to basic human rights. Above all, he needs to be loved. He or she has to be loved, first of all, and not only just see his differences. Not see that, sometimes what we are doing today is we are trying to only uplift the child through his skills, through his talents, and we are trying to showcase that. But then he's not just his skills and talents, he's a human being. He has all these apprehensions. He has all these dreams also within himself. So, creating awareness and acceptance about autism should not be restricted to 2nd April or the month of April alone. It should be something that we do throughout the 365 days of the year. This is what. And here, this is a quote by an autistic boy, a non speaking autistic boy, to treat people in the same way, irrespective of whether that they are autistic or not. Parents possibly are. Through being the caregivers, most important leaders in making this occur, acceptance is people taken for who they are. This is by Tarun Paul. I have taken this from a mother who quoted her son, who is a non speaking autistic boy. And he says, treat us the same way. How would you be like to be treated differently? But that is what we are doing. But treat them, accept them as the people taken for who they are. So every person deserves a chance to reach his or her full potential. That is in our hands, in the hands of the parents, in the hands of the teachers. And this is where I'm putting a quote here saying, a teacher is a person who takes a hand, opens the mind, and even touches the heart. This is what every teacher should be. And the best teacher is the parent. That's what I always tell to many parents. Don't criticize about the services that is not being offered to you. You become the teacher. You study, even special ed or whatever needs to be, instead of just sitting and facing the trauma day in and day out. So this is something I want to tell y'all, because this has come out from a parent who shared with us about his son, and the son had told this great words which says, don't give up on us. It seems something happened at home that day, and both the parents were very agitated. They even scolded the child for something that he was not able to do, or maybe he was not able to understand. So that time the child could type. So he said, don't give up on us. We have every right, like you and me, to be part of the society. So, this is what I would like to share today, or I'm closing my small talk today, that accept them, don't give up on them, treat them as your own, get into their shoes, find out how they are feeling that moment, what is happening to them at that moment, whether they are in pain or whether they are in anxiety, because they speak through their actions. Don't we say that? Our action speaks for ourselves. So their action is speaking about themselves, about their inner self. So thank you very much. And now I look forward to any questions. Thank you very much for listening to me, and I hope I was able to bring out what was expected of me today. And I take this opportunity to thank the organizers. Any questions?
Yeah. Hello, ma'am. Can you hear me?
Yeah, I can hear you.
Yeah. I would say a very enlightening and very enriching session this morning we had, and I'm sure the people who are watching us has got a very insightful information in a very brief uh, time limit. But it was amazing. I really enjoyed it. Yes, there are a couple of questions, which I would like to highlight. Okay. Um, okay. One of them is. What to do if the parent is on a denial stage or on stage of bargain. Okay, so how do we bring those, as you discussed, the stages of you know different stages of acceptance which parents go through, but in a way, this still the parent is on a denial stage, or maybe from the denial they move to a bargain stage. So how do we come or bring that parents to a conscience where they start working for the child?
Ma'am, this is very wonderful question,
Yes.
because this is what, whether you are a school or whether you're a counselor, you will be facing when the parent comes to you for the first time. It's very difficult to immediately understand where they are. But once they come into a school searching for a service, it means that they have come to at least some form of acceptance. So, when I say some form of acceptance, we do not know still whether it is complete acceptance. Even when they come to you searching for a service, they can be in the denial stage. So it is very, very, what do you call, individualized session that we have to do with each parent,
Mm-hmm.
because their words, that is why we as psychologists also want to watch out when they are talking to you, their body language, the words they bring out. And from that, if you're really noticing them in a very, very minute way, you will know where the parent is.
Okay. Uh,
So, as I told you, I'm sure you must be having your psychology department, and your psychologists are qualified enough to help out. See, one instance I want to share here is, it's a very, what do you call, painful instance that I'm sharing, because it has been hurting me even till today. See, I came across a news in the papers that a mother suddenly had a separation from her husband. So she was facing that trauma, and she has had a 9-year-old child with autism. So this mother, in a fit of rage maybe, or anger, or something that she was undergoing at that time, she went to the third floor and threw her daughter down. The child didn't die. It happened a few years ago. She went down, picked up the child again, and she threw the child down again until she died. She was arrested, that's a different story. But what I'm saying is, haven't anyone noticed what the mother was undergoing? If she was going to a school, the teacher should have noticed it. The same thing happened with another family who had two children with whatever disability, and the parents poisoned the children and they killed themselves. So they were attending a school. I came to know about it. But why haven't the people around them noticed something in their appearance, maybe in the way they were talking, or in the way they were, reacting? So we have to be very, very careful in monitoring even the parents, not just the child, but the parents. And here I would like to emphasize that things are happening around us. One incident happened recently, maybe 2 years ago, and this child was a child with Down syndrome, and he was put up in a hotel to learn housekeeping, and he can travel by himself. But on that particular day, he got into some wrong bus and he lost his way, and they were trying to trace him. Even I was getting messages saying, like, this boy is lost. And next day we are hearing the, what do you call, we came to know that the boy was seeking shelter on a platform, and a lorry ran over him. I don't have to tell about all these things, but the question that affected me at that time was, didn't anyone in that road, did anyone, the path that the child was going, notice that this child was lost? Till today, a child, Tarun, with autism spectrum disorder, has been lost, and they are still searching for him. So, we, the people, the society, we should notice a child is different, a child is lost, and the child cannot ask for the way. The child cannot say, I'm lost. So, the society,
very true, ma'am.
enlightenment.
Like, definitely, yeah. And that's a case which happens with where one parent is on an acceptance mode and the other one is not. So there
Not.
also it becomes a challenge in the family. That's what
Yeah.
was been a question posted by one of our other parents as well. Okay, there's
Yeah.
also a question, like what are the early symptoms a parent can understand? I think you have covered it in a brief during your session. And is there any medications available for an autistic child? That's a question been posted by one of our parents. And if you can guide our parents regarding some of the centers in India, back in India, where they can, especially in this part of the world, when they go back for their vacations and all, they can seek out for some treatment. So can you guide us regarding the same few centers where they can go and ask for help, or they can seek the treatment for the child?
Ma'am, first and foremost, every parent and also we have to understand, this is not a disease, it is a condition. that exists with them throughout the life. So, this is not something magical where we can give a medicine and treat the child. And you were asking me about the early symptoms. They say that the early symptoms are there. And the first thing is the child will have irritable cry. The child will not be bonding even right after birth. But then, because it's an asocial behavior and a language problem, which is evident only after 2 years. So that is why they say most of the parents come to know, or even they will know that the child was functioning properly. He may have had speech, he could even recite rhymes and everything, but slowly the language deficit was seen, and then all the behavior started exhibiting because everything happens when the environment changes for the child. So there are symptoms. I didn't go through it in detail because I thought by now parents are doing, knowing so many things through Google. Now, why I didn't want to go through each of those behaviors also? It may be present in some child, it may not be present in another child. Sometimes the parents go into a panic mode and say, oh my gosh, my child is not having this. Maybe he should be having that. Or maybe he shouldn't be having that. There are so much of conflicts I have come across during my 4 decades of working with children with different disability. Now, yes, I will try to help you all out by finding out what are the place centers or schools. There have been many parents who have come away from Dubai or from some other Middle East countries seeking program here. I know parents who have come from even US to seek some services here. But let me find out for you all, and definitely I will pass on the information. And what I can do now is, like, to more in detail about the symptoms and everything, I will share my PPT with you all. So, in case you all have any doubts later on, also, I'm always available. You can call upon me and get any of your doubts cleared. Hope I'm clear. Thank you. Anything
That's
else?
really amazing. And yeah, just a last question, which I, as an educator, have it. Okay, because this is a difficulty I do face it. Especially being an inclusive education. Now, of course, when we are talking about the accommodation and provisions and all, when we talk about a long-term accommodation or being setting up as an inclusive school, on our early stages, definitely we can support these children. But as the curriculum need increases, okay, now us being a CBSE school, and I'm sure there are other boards also, where there are very limited provision when we go to higher grades, from the boards itself, in terms of the subjects or in terms of many other things, okay, which at a time it would definitely become maybe if a child is PDD or an Asperger's, they can definitely manage through or sail through the curriculum. But whereas if I talk about a child with a moderate difficulty, okay, I'm sure it would be challenging for him or her to sail through the curriculum need at grade 5 or grade 6 or maybe higher than that. So how do we, help those children in an inclusive setup? That is what I want to understand, because that's a challenge definitely we as a inclusive school often face. And it's very difficult to take it to the next level to the parent, or many of the children might need a special school where the vocational training would be very beneficial for the child, but still the parents are not on the acceptance mode, and as the grades are now increasing, it's little challenging for us. So how do we help and support those parents, and as a school, how do we set a plan of action for those children?
Ma'am, it's $1 million question you have asked. Because not only you, it has been asked over and over again, both by the special schools and both by the inclusion schools also. Now, as I told you, it is very child specific. Even if we are offering an inclusive education or an inclusive curricula, I found out in many schools it is a watered down curriculum. A child or a young man, I forgot to mention this, but I would like to mention, he has been accepted for a PhD in a university in US. And there are organizations which are employing people like Microsoft and so many other companies, a person with with autism or autism spectrum disorder. So it doesn't mean that the child cannot, uh, you know, um, take up the curriculum that we are giving. Of course, the curriculum in an inclusive school is a bit high for our children. And instead of see, I went to many schools. In fact, I was offered a job also to run a special, the inclusive school. This was in Cochin. Okay, it was an international school.
Okay.
But then the problem I saw there was the integration or the inclusion was happening only in the period of physical activities or some art classes or some other watered down curriculum. And here they were breaking down that curriculum, like, if it is a lesson in science, they were just making it easy for the child. So, as you said, the acceptance of parents is not there. They don't want to transit to a special school. But then, keeping in the interest of the child, long term, what is the child going to do? So, at the early, not at the early stage, give him all the opportunities he needs till whichever class he can cope with, and then identify, can he manage or can he not? Here in India, we have this NIOS. So most of the parents that I
Yeah.
have come across, they said, okay, we want our child to get a certificate. But I always ask them, okay, NIOS is fine. You're using a scribe to write the letter, the paper. But then what happens next? Where do you want your child to be? Is your child independent in his life skills, in his activities of daily living? Or even if you're putting him into an vocational stream, what is a vocation? We don't want that rubber stamp jobs like making envelopes, making candles, making something, paper bags, and all arts and craft. But is it marketable? After the parents, we are here. Even for my daughter, I've taught her many schools skills. But then, who is going to buy the materials for them? Can she
Very
go
true.
and buy for herself? what is it what is it that is involved in making a child independent, irrespective of autism or autism spectrum disorder, cerebral palsy, or whatever it may be? So ma'am, it is very child specific, and only the school has to decide. And I would suggest an interdisciplinary approach rather than a multidisciplinary approach,
Approach. Yes.
taking the child from one therapist to the other or from one class to the other. As soon as I'm a great, what do you call, a believer of having an interdisciplinary system in teaching a child. The child is important. I hope I've
Uh,
answered your question.
Yes, ma'am, you have. So, with that note, I think we have ended our question and answer session. And with that note, I would really like you to, like propose the vote of the thanks. It, as I already started, like it has been a very enriching and enlightening morning, specifically the points you covered in your session. It was amazing. It was very, very, I would say, approachable and understandable for a parent. If I'm a parent not from the field, of course, as a parent also I would definitely understand what the speaker is trying to convey. A few points which I really like about the session was a very brief explanation, as you said, about, although I don't speak Tamil, but I understood the quote,
Yeah.
that nowadays is not God, it's Google. Yeah. So we do get a very good understanding from Google, or the information which is not even relevant, of course. The research which you highlighted, the past research versus the present, that was a very good comparative study, to understand what exactly is the difference, or what is a shift of awareness, what we have got, or the knowledge which has been increased in the society. Also, the stages of trauma, I would say that was really important, like even as a parent or as a listener, I would understand, okay, which stage I am into right now, or where I need to move forward. um, Also, a very key important point about, most of the programs are only about awareness or awareness about autism, which we generally do. And we are lucky that, this year, our shift was also not on awareness, it was more about the acceptance. And at least, we are looking forward and we are on the track, I would say that, where the shift has to be more about the acceptance rather than awareness, and about the inclusion and how it is very crucial, on the different aspects what we look into. I'm sure it is very, very, enlightening for all of us. And the last quote which you mentioned, don't give up on us, I would say that it was really overwhelming and it was really heart touching. I would definitely say that at this part of the world, the acceptance, the awareness is very much better. We do had a child, as you mentioned, about a child being getting lost, and unfortunately, the child couldn't survive, and it was people ignorance in a way where nobody could support. But we recently had a child who got lost. He was 17 years old. He's a very renowned child. He has achieved a lot, and he had got lost. And within 12 hours, he was found. So that's the acceptance level, and that's the way people are working out here in this part of the world. And it's kind of a blessing that we work here. Even the inclusive education in the school, the ministry looks into, it's, I would say, it's amazing. As an educator, we also feel that, oh, we have to do what we have to do next. It makes us think in that
Yeah.
way. So with that note, I would like to present you, I'll just share my screen with thank you note and a thank you certificate from our side for being with us, uh, and sharing your knowledge to the best. I hope you can see my screen.
I can see you as of now. I have to see your screen.
Okay, yeah, I have got it. Is it now
Yeah.
being
Yes, yes, resource person. Thank you so
yeah,
much. I
yes,
really
we
appreciate the opportunity you all gave me because
and a
I take
thank
it
you note
upon
from
myself. Yeah.
Ambassador family. Yeah, we
Okay.
really thank you for the session and for your great, your valuable information you had with us this morning. And definitely, we are going to mail you this thing.
Thank you, ma'am.
Um, Okay. So thank you so much, ma'am, for the wonderful session you had for our parents and for all of us this morning, and sparing the time to educate us on a very key important aspect that autism is not a disability, it's a different ability, and we just need to accept it. And not only about autism, it's about all the, the different disorders under the special needs. We just need acceptance. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, ma'am. And on a last note, I just want to say I'm taking it upon myself as a mission now to impart all my experience and knowledge I have so that you all can take it across to the next generation. And thank you so much, Amal Raj, for introducing me to your wonderful school and to all the wonderful people who are here. And a big thank you to the parents who had been with us this morning. Thank you.
Thank you, ma'am.